Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalat, wassalam ala rasulullah, and welcome to a special Ramadan edition of TISA Talks. My name is Jimmy E. Jones. I am a professor and executive vice president of the Islamic Seminary of America, the primary sponsor of these TISA Talks. We'll talk about our other sponsors in a few moments. The slide you see on the screen right now is a slide of the Islamic Seminary of America, but we don't have the whole building. We don't give you the impression that we do. We occupy part of the second floor of this building called Serene Plaza in Richardson, Texas. And we've announced this the last time. We are in the process of putting together something called the Center for Ethical and Effective Organizational Leadership. And we're raising money through Launch Good for this effort. And just want to tell you a little bit about it, give you a little commercial before we launch into our topic for today. The first effort by the center is something called the Post-Pandemic Professional and Organizational Workshops that we're going to, inshallah, have throughout the country. They'll be focused on capacity building in the Muslim community and leadership enhancement. How will we do this? These will be weekend workshops. There will be all expenses paid, inshallah, where we will focus on mental health strategies for individuals and organizations, because Allah knows we'll need it after this thing. And secondly, we'll look at crisis leadership from our perspective, from our usul. And third, we'll sit with the people who come and talk about either how to craft a professional development plan or on the hand, an organizational development plan. And inshallah, we're raising money, we'll give them grants to implement those plans. And so I'm very excited about this because for me, who's been around Islamic institutions and education for a while, this is a critical game changer in the sense that we're trying to put together the classical sources along with contemporary ideas. And you'll see this when you meet our guests in a few moments. That's what we actually do in our classroom, but we want to bring it to people by moving around different cities in the United States once everybody really opens up and we have the support that we need in order to open up. So that's the Center for Ethical and Effective Organizational Leadership. What are we about today? We're about today the principles of Islamic humanitarian work in a pandemic. So what we're going to do here is connect those principles from a course that's taught by one of our guests to the pandemic that's surrounding us at the moment. And here are pictures of our guests. This is the topic for today is Principles of Islamic Humanitarian Work in a Pandemic, Student and Faculty Reflections. And we have Dr. Abed Ayoub and Coloma Hamilton. Dr. Ayoub is on our faculty, and Kelona is one of our students, and by the way, an intern at TISA. And so Dr. Abed is a faculty member here and also at IU, I believe, in the School of Philanthropy and other places, as a matter of fact, but he's a faculty here at TISA, and he's the president and CEO of the United Muslim Relief. He has a long history of work in this area, an extremely long history of work in this area, and he's with us today. And then our student is Coloma Hamilton. What you should know about her is that recently, in her former job, she worked with ICNA Relief. And so we have people who have been on the front lines of working around humanitarian organizations. Our program today is co-sponsored by the Association of Muslim Chaplains, a sister organization, the Muslim Endorsement Council, another sister organization, Rabata, another sister organization. These are all sister organizations. Rabata is led by Dr. Tamara Gray, who is on our faculty and our academic council, and United Muslim Relief, which these are all sister organizations. United Muslim Relief is one of our sister organizations. So the way we want to enter this is to give you a quick glimpse of how we operate at TISA and then get into the meat of the topic today. The two people that you're going to hear from today are part of a course called MANP 680, Principles and Practices of Islamic Humanitarian Work. And we've turned it into a TISA Talk. The instructor, as I said, is Dr. Abed. He has office hours around the time that he has on-site, online hours, and we decided we wouldn't put his full telephone number on the screen. He gets plenty of calls from all over the world as it is. And so, but anyway, this is what the students see on their syllabus. And all of our faculty have emails that are associated with the seminary. The course description starts off properly with an ayah from the Quran, because we believe that the fount of knowledge is wahi, is revelation from our Lord. And he starts his syllabus off with what's translated in English as saying, "We feed you for the sake of Allah only. We wish for no reward nor thanks from you." These are our principles at work. And he describes the work of the course as humanitarian work is a fundamental principle and pillar in Islam. This course will explore the early foundation of charity in the Quran and Sunnah and the establishment of zakat, how to integrate modern concepts of governance and ethics with Islamic ideals. Students will gain an understanding of current fundraising strategies that goes beyond the mosque, various organizational structures within the nonprofit field, and the difference between relief and development. The main objective of this course is to provide understanding and insights on the causes and natures of human conflicts induced due to emergencies ranging from war, terrorism, attacks, refugee influx, and health emergency. You can see from this description that this course encompasses of what we're about. First, its roots in the Quran and the Sunnah, but it deals with issues we're all concerned about: zakat, conflicts, the kinds of things that we as human beings are concerned about on a day-to-day basis. Learning objectives are to explain the current debate on conflicts that causes possible solutions, ways to avoid future conflicts, analyze the policy options for targeting and working with the communities affected by conflicts, critically assess the policies and tools to avoid conflicts and return to normal life, examine the ethics and politics behind providing humanitarian aid, define humanitarian concepts guided by international aid principles, learn the critical areas of organizational capacity building, discover fundraising strategies that will ensure the long-term sustainability of a nonprofit organization. Again, I want to note that Dr. Abed is not only a professor, but he's running, as we sit here, United Muslim Relief that is doing great work throughout the world, internationally speaking. And so, and he put this syllabus together. He put this syllabus together. And so we have the best of both worlds, as it were, an academic as well as an activist in trying to deal with some of the issues that he's talking about. So the course schedule quickly, because I'm taking too much time. The course schedule, this will give you an idea of how we teach what we teach. The course for this schedule is scheduled for Friday, January 31st from 5 to 9, and then the next day, Saturday from 8 to 4, and then scheduled for Friday, April 17th from 5 to 9, and then from Saturday from 8 to 4. Now, coronavirus interfered with this schedule, and the professors sometimes schedule because he's on the front line of delivering services. Sometimes there were changes and by agreement with the professor and the students. The online courses were scheduled for Wednesdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Our courses use Central Standard Time. And by Populi, which is a platform for the students, some of you have heard of Blackboard, and Zoom, which we're using this afternoon. Attendance is mandatory, of course, for regular students as well as for people who want to audit and get a certificate. So I just wanted to give you an idea of how we do our work here. The required text for this course, to give you a flavor of it, terrorism, a history, and then humanitarian intervention, and then conflict and development. I won't go through down the list, but you'll see these are all texts that deal with contemporary issues. In the background constantly, he doesn't list it here, is the Quran with Sunnah. I mean, that's in the background of all the courses. And you can see by him starting out his syllabus with an ayat from the Quran. And again, we end this presentation with the ayat that we presented at the beginning. We feed you, saying, we feed you for the sake of Allah only. We wish for no reward nor thanks from you. We close it with asking you to join us for the summer, inshallah, if everything is opening. There are 2 courses that we're offering in the summertime: counseling and cross-cultural communication with Dr. Rania Awa, myself, and Dr. Tahir Khawaja. Both Dr. Khawaja and Dr. Ayoub are psychiatrists, and I acted as a pastoral counselor for the past 20 or 30 years. And it should be an exciting, dynamic face-to-face course. And then we're going to have a course called The Foundations of Effective Organizational Leadership on campus with Dr. Tamara Gray, myself, and Benita McGee. All three of us have worked very extensively on the front line with organizational development. Again, it's the same concept. The academic background married together with the organizational skills and frontline skills. In the meantime, as we started out, we were raising money, and if you go to Launch Good, I don't know if Ibrahim can put up the Launch Good link in the chat. If you want to join with us in helping Muslim organizations recover, helping Muslim communities recover, helping Muslim individuals recover from what we're going through right now. We call it Stronger Leaders, Stronger Communities. If you want to help us out, we are having a special fundraiser that will fund those post-pandemic professional and organizational development workshops. And so you can go, and if you put in Stronger Leaders, Stronger Communities and Launch Good, you'll find it. And we hope that you'll join in this effort. If you look at our social media, you'll find many messages from people affiliated with the work that we do throughout social media. And finally, a commercial for the next TISA Talks, which will be about one of the courses that we're planning to have, inshallah, in the summer, counseling and cross-cultural communication. It's going to be, inshallah, on May 27th in the evening, and it will feature the three people who are teaching the course before Drs. Ayoub and Dr. Khawaja and myself talking about the concepts we're going to cover in the course. Now to our special guest for today. There's a hashtag called Muslim Proud, and I often use it when I talk about things that I'm particularly proud of in the Muslim community. And one of the things that I'm particularly proud of in the Muslim community are our relief organizations. I think we have some issues, organizational and leadership-wise, in the Muslim community. But I think when I look at what United Muslim Relief is doing, Islamic Relief, which is in the same building where we are, and Dr. Abed used to be the leader of Islamic Relief, and ICNA Relief, and these are not the only ones, by the way, ICNA Relief, where Kelona used to work. I'm just Muslim proud. I'm just not making this up, because I think that we do some of our best witnessing for humanity through the work of organizations like the one that Dr. Abed leads right now, and the one that Sister Kelona used to work for. So I'm very proud to be with the both of you, and may Allah reward you for your efforts, because you're doing very, very important work for the Muslim community and for humanity. And that's the mandate, I believe, that we get from the Quran and the way of our beloved Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. So welcome to TISA Talks, Dr. Abed and Sister Kelona. So the way I'd like to start, before we get into principles, is again, we're sort of getting people to understand what we do here at TISA, is to break down the title, the Islamic Seminary of America. It has three parts. And I'd like to ask you three questions related to the three parts after first of all, how Islamic is this institution? From your perspective as a faculty member, Dr. Abed, won't we have you start? How Islamic do you think, given your experience dealing with us? And also, I've forgotten to mention that Dr. Abed is on our board, mashallah.
Jazakallah khair. And actually, I'm proud to be a faculty member with TISA and with scholars, alhamdulillah, that they are teaching at TISA. And alhamdulillah, it's, if you look at the what we're doing in TISA, one of our goals is to make actually the students to be proud to be Muslims, to know the Islamic history, to know what actually was out there. A lot of sciences, especially like leadership, for example, it's my field, leadership and management. Those are new concepts in the West. But the leadership is actually, if you look at the Islamic history, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came up with a leadership style that everybody needs it. So he was not just a great military leader. He was not just an economist. He was not just a spiritual leader. He was a total leader. So, and this concept is missing. You know, if you look at the Western philosophy, they can make you the best doctor in the world, the best engineer in the world. So, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sunnah, they describe it how to become the best human being. So, and they said, you know, the best human being is the most beneficial to others. Yes. So we put things in the right perspective. Although you can be a famous doctor, a famous engineer, famous soccer player, famous NBA player, but again, as a human being, how you should be. So this is how we measure it, and this is the values that we try to teach the students, and the ideas that we try to promote in the courses.
Thank you, Dr. Sister Kelona, from the students' perspective, just how Islamic is the Islamic Seminary of America?
Wow, that is a really good question. Well, the seminary, as a student there, I've already completed my bachelor's degree, right? So I've been to a major university, secular institution. And when I did my undergrad, I did take religious studies courses. And it is a completely different experience taking a religious course in a secular university versus taking any course from a religious institution. It's very, very different. And I realized that because TISA was my first experience in being fully engaged in a religious, higher education institution, first time. And it was so much more than I expected. So it's not just that, you're learning Islam. TISA has other courses, other programs of study. They have the Islamic Studies and the Master's in Divinity, but that's not the program I'm doing. I'm doing the Master's in Nonprofit Management. That's a secular subject. I could get that degree anywhere from so many different institutions, but there's nowhere else really that I could learn this material from a completely Islamic perspective. It's different, and when you look at the secular courses that you take as a student in any other institution, you have to take your Islam and kind of, layer it on top and try to figure out how to make it fit. How can I make all of these concepts and principles make sense in my religion, and what do I need to throw out and what do I keep? But with TISA, it's a completely different experience. Everything is given to you through an Islamic lens. And so you understand just in your everyday activities, or in my case, specifically in managing a nonprofit, how you do it as a Muslim and how you do it better because you're a Muslim, if that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense to me. All right, there are lots of seminaries. If you look across from California to New York, and if you Google Islamic seminaries, you'll find lots of them. But what I found is that some of them aren't seminaries in the sense that both of my graduate degrees happen to be from Christian seminaries. They're higher education institutions. So oftentimes, we Muslims, we say Islamic seminary, but we really mean adult education. Is the Islamic Seminary of America really a graduate school? Dr. Abed?
Yes, from my experience and interacting with the professors and board members at the seminaries and looking at the curriculums and discussing with the students, all the feedback that I got, especially from the students, they are very happy with the course, and the information that they get, it's relevant and to the level that they can understand it and advance even their career. Right. We focus a lot also on ethics. It's not, again, to me, it's not just to become a successful businessman or running an organization, but you have to pay attention to the ethics of the work. And that's become a major focus, and we take it to the highest degree. So we don't look at the students that they are beginners and so on. No, we give them all what we have, and we try to, with them, learn and go to next level.
So it's not Islam 101.
No, it's not Islam one-on-one. We go as deep as we can.
Okay. How about it? How does it feel, Sister Kelona, just having finished the first semester? Does it feel like Islam 101?
Oh, no. MashaAllah, it's a rigorous program. It's a rigorous program. This is definitely graduate level work. And I think what's kind of interesting is, so when you're in your undergraduate studies, it's all about what you're taking in, right? You're learning, you're absorbing, and it's really about that. Even what you produce, you really just kind of regurgitate what you learned. But with TISA, in a graduate level program, it's the complete opposite. You're learning a tremendous amount of information, but you're also being asked to contribute a great deal to the discourse in the classroom. And then your output is where the focus is. Like, is it original? Are you solving a problem right now that we're experiencing in our society? You know, it's a very, very different experience. So graduate level, absolutely.
We got that part, right?
We got that down. We're good.
Now, the final part is of America. So Islam has a bad rap in this country. You know, in the public square, we're not presented positively. We'll let you start this time, Sister Kelona. It has a very bad rap in America. And oftentimes when we start Islamic institutions, the sort of the intent and the trajectory of the institution is to sort of wall ourselves off from the evils of the American society, you know, because we do have institutions that do that. To what extent does the classroom that you've been in, connect to the larger American culture from your perspective?
That's an interesting question. So it's very much what you've said. There's an expectation that our faith has to kind of be separate from everything else as a part of our culture as Americans. I'm American. I'm an American convert. I've been Muslim about 20 years or so. And so I think a lot of time we as Americans, we take our culture and it's sort of segmented, you know, it's separated from the rest of what we do when it comes to Islam. And that's a big mistake. And what I found with the Islamic Seminary of America is that sort of American culture is embraced, and it makes the learning environment more inviting in this way. As a convert, sometimes you'll go into different communities, and this is a problem across the country, where you feel unwelcome, right? Because there's a strong cultural influence there from somewhere, and you feel like you don't quite fit in. And that really impedes you advancing. It impedes you connecting with other people in the community, impedes you being involved with the community because you feel excluded. So it's problematic. But TISA, just on a ground level, and I mean, there's really two sides to this. I'll go into both if there's time. But the first side is really on a ground level, that because there's this sort of American culture that's present there, it's so much more welcoming. Just the campus alone, you guys should visit the campus. The campus, mashallah, is beautiful. And it's beautiful in the sense that it's not like a building that you take Islam and you slap Islam onto the door of the building. The TISA has a vibe to it, that everything about the institution is very much in line with our culture as Americans. It feels, and in line with Islam at the same time. When you walk in, it's not just art on the wall, it feels peaceful, it feels calm. It feels like an Islamic environment, but also without the sort of cultural hangups that can make some people feel excluded. And then on a larger level, the institution, in terms of the education that we're receiving, it's very much an acknowledgement of what's happening in our society right now. The things that we're learning are things that, it's not some esoteric knowledge that, you know, you sit at home and you have big, long discussions about with your family and then it ends there. Instead, the things that we're learning are practical, you know, methods and ideologies and things about ethics that apply to our everyday lives and really can transform our everyday lives and how we behave as American Muslims in this country.
Yeah, at this point, I think I need to give a shout out to the staff down there in Richardson. Some people might not know it because I have people on Facebook say, when did you move to Texas? Well, not particularly, since Texas doesn't seem too welcoming to people in my age group. You know, the lieutenant governor was quoted as saying, I'm paraphrasing. He says, "Living is overrated. Really, you know, we should get back to business and save our." He actually said this: we should save our state for our children, our grandchildren. I said, "Well, he's talking about me, and I'm in Connecticut." But I want to give a shout out to Sister Shazim. She and Brother Tariq, they walked in last August into chaos and made it orderly and peaceful. All the things that you said were, to a large extent, what they put together with volunteers, with other staff, and then Ibrahim, who's the IT person today, and Noor helped them out. So this is what you said is a tribute to the staff that's at headquarters. So Professor Abed, is this a institution in your view that makes good connections to American culture?
Yes, actually, if you look at the names of the board members and the faculty members, most of them, either they were born and raised in here, or they've been in the United States for a very long time, and they got their degrees from the United States. They understand the society, they apply the Islamic principles within the American society. We all practice in the United States. I myself, I was an advisor to the USAID worldwide, and I was an advisor to Hillary Clinton, and an advisor to John Kerry, and many. And I was involved, very involved in the Obama's administration. And we work in this society. We partner with Red Cross, with FEMA, with many organizations as mainstream. We understand the culture. And what I really love about TISA, that we try to emphasize that applying the Islamic principle does not, working in this society does not mean that you compromise your Islam. Although we are proud Muslims, but we're still part of the society. We interact with the society. And what we learn at TISA and what we teach at TISA, it's how to be a proud Muslim and at the same time active in the society and positive contributors to the society.
I just want to let our viewers know that they'll have the opportunity to join in the next 10, 15 minutes. We're about halfway through the program, and all you have to do is type a question in, and we'll try to get to it before we finish. So let's get into the meat of the issue, the whole issue of Islamic humanitarian ideals during the pandemic. This pandemic has rocked the world, not just the United States of America. It's rocked the United States of America, and it has rocked the Muslim community. I mean, I was talking to one of my friends. People are still debating about whether or not the masjid should be open. I mean, amazingly, in my perspective. So what are some Islamic principles when it comes to humanitarian principles when it comes to the pandemic, Dr. Abed?
Well, actually, if you look at the pandemic, it did happen before in the Islamic history. This is not something new. And the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described it when he created the human being, he said, we created the human being dignified. So to deal with all kinds of people in the society, whether they got affected or not, with dignity, with the humanity, that you treat them as dignified a human being, this is a core principles of Islam. And for us in Islam, there is no discrimination, no whatsoever. We provide the aid without looking at race, gender, color, and so on. By Islam, we treat everybody equally. And even though you are in the position to give and help in this pandemic, does not mean that you are better than others. It happened that you are, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you with bounties, and other people, they are in a disadvantage. We have to treat them with utmost respect, and this is a core Islamic principles. So no discrimination, and we deal with everyone with highest level of respect.
Okay. Sister Kelona, well, what can you add from your experiences at ICNA Relief and your experience in the classroom?
From ICNA Relief, I can give you a short little story, actually. So like Dr. Abed is saying, with a nonprofit organization, with the humanitarian organization, there was no discrimination, right? So when we came upon the tornadoes last year in October, so I was the disaster liaison for North Texas for ICNA Relief. And so that meant I dealt with all of the disaster relief efforts and organizing things. And of course, this was a situation where you saw a lot of non-Muslims in need, right? It affected everyone equally. And it was interesting because we had one client that came in, and it was after the bustle of everything. Caucasian gentleman came in to our office and he needed some help. And so we were just going through this whole process and just kind of comforting him and getting him what he needed. And, you know, he stopped and he said, "This is the first time that I've dealt with a religious organization and they didn't preach." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, normally they're preaching, they're saying something, you know, Jesus this and this and that." And I said, "Well, we don't need to preach. You know, we're not here to convert you. We're here to help you. And our actions speak much louder than our words. We do this because we're Muslims. This is what motivates us. So the help that you're getting, you know, it doesn't require us to become missionaries to give it to you. You know, it's our obligation as human beings to help you." So it was a really enlightening experience because I hadn't realized that was a practice in other organizations. And this was before my class with Dr. Abed. So then when I took my course with Dr. Abed, it all came together because he got into the principles, you know, one of the humanitarian principles is that, you know, we don't do missionary work. You're not going to sell your faith, you know, for a loaf of bread, as Dr. Abed puts it. Humanitarian work is humanitarian work and nothing more. So it's not an opportunity for like verbal dawah. And I thought, wow, you know, ICNA Relief was doing that. They were doing that. And this was, you know, this is a strong principle in Islamic relief, but also in this country. It's not legal to proselytize and do humanitarian work from the same organization. So yeah, I mean, that's what I would have to add.
Yeah, well, that leads me into my next question. I'll stay with you. What's the difference between, you started that, what's the difference between Islamic aid and aid from other people?
You want to start with me?
Start with
really? You sure? Okay.
If you don't want me to, I'll go to Dr. Abed. Dr. Abed, the difference between Islamic aid and aid to the other people.
No, alhamdulillah. So, you know, it's a lot of values are actually universal values. But Islamic aid is actually, in Islam, everything is go back to the intention. So, and anything that we do, we have to go back and measure it against our aqidah, our fiqh, our Islamic manners. If it's allowed, you know, it's allowed to do, if it's halal to do, we will continue. If it's haram, we stop. The Islam regulate things and put system. So it's not like, you know, it's you can use all means to achieve goals. No, so we have to make sure that anything that we do is actually in halal way. It's actually the fiqh and our aqidah and our Quran is actually allowing this to happen. And that's, you know, the system that it's in Islam is actually by far much more advanced. And if you see a lot of even American law when it comes to relief and humanitarian work is matching with our Islamic tradition and Islamic teachings. And even if you look at the concept of restricted fund, the concept of restricted fund in the American law is matching with the concept of restricted fund in the Sharia law. So, for example, if somebody donated to form a clinic, you cannot take this money and go and open a school with it, right? Without take a permission from the donor. That's in Islam and in the American law is actually matching. So our Islam is very, very rich when it comes to relief and humanitarian work, and has a lot of guidance. And a lot of even United Nations agencies, Red Cross and so on, benefited from the Muslim researchers and the Muslim literatures on how to design their declarations and their laws.
This is an untold story, Dr. Abed. Maybe we should figure out how to get that word out. Yes. Sister Kelona, anything to add from your perspective?
I feel like Dr. Abed, hit the nail on the head. I think the only thing that might be beneficial to add is there's a sort of idea that with an Islamic organization, it's not ours. It's not ours. The work that we're doing is the organization, it belongs to the beneficiaries. It's the work, for the sake of Allah. So in that sense, sometimes you see like a mainstream organization or a secular nonprofit, and the board members and the president, and they feel like this is theirs. This is their organization. They're going to run it the way that they want to run it. But it's very different with an Islamic organization, because our understanding is that it doesn't belong to the board members. Right. It doesn't belong to the president of the organization. This belongs to the beneficiaries. This is theirs. And this organization is just a tool for us to do what Allah has commanded us to do. These organizations are really just fulfilling our obligation to help the poor and to help the needy. So it's a very different sort of idea in terms of how we think about how to run the organization. The accountability being to Allah is a lot stronger than your accountability just being to the federal government.
Absolutely. I just want to tell a little story myself. Here in New Haven, I often walk the streets, and I try to have some money available to give to people on the poor who are actually on the streets. And I found myself, this is years ago, I just want to say to people, I found myself giving easier to give to people who look like me. And if we were, quote, white, as they would call them, it was hard for me to dig into my pocket. And then one day I just had a revelation that this is not my money. The risk, the provision comes from my Lord, and the people who belong to certain categories have a right over it. It's not, it doesn't, it's just deeper than that. First, it comes from my Lord. Second, they have a right over it. And really, I'm committing a sin by withholding it. Not so much to that specific person, but definitely withholding it based on, the racial animus that's kicked up in this society. You just think, they couldn't possibly, because they're white, they couldn't possibly need it as much as a Black person. But the reality is that that's, and both of the point that both of you are saying, that's not the way Islam is built, and that's not the way this work should be carried out. As Dr. Abed said, is that it doesn't matter, what race, creed, color, sexual orientation, all those things that people like to hang on us as being against people. It just simply doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a need, and it really is an obligation in our faith. Let me just segue to a question about, we're portrayed negatively in the press. We're one of the whipping boys. I think people who are brown these days, you don't even stick around. The minister who ended Barack Obama's inauguration, he did a benediction. He says, if you're white, you're all right. If you're brown, you stick around. If you're Black, get back. But these days, brown people, and what I mean by brown people, in particular, Mexicans, immigrants, because they're coded as brown. And when you put on a hijab, I don't care, women put on a hijab, I don't care how light they are, they're coded as brown, you follow me? And so isn't this a tough thing to do in that atmosphere, particularly when, even with the pandemic, people are going to state capitals with Nazi flags and Confederate. even with the pandemic, they're waving these flags and race baiting. Isn't this a very hard work to do, Dr. Abed?
It is, but again, I mean, this is the reality in the American society, and we have to deal with it. So for us, we have to focus on our work and put our faith in action and find ways how to navigate through all of that. So we put our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we give it our best shot. And alhamdulillah, we were able to even form partnerships with organizations like Red Cross, for example, with FEMA, with even the Mormons, with many, you know, I've seen a lot of even Muslim organizations form this kind of partnership and start helping people, whether they like us or they don't like us. You know, this is not the point. So, and again, putting the faith in action, this is the best course of action. So, and we believe that we as Muslims, when we put our faith in action, this is the best form of da'wah. You don't have to go distribute the copy of the Quran. You don't have to go and start talking about the Quran, but show it in action. So give them, you know, it's again, whether they like us or not, we need to give because we follow the most need. So, and all of these people who actually was speaking against us, I myself, you know, I responded with my previous organization to the tornado hit Oklahoma once. And when they saw us, the one that we are distributing aid to them, and we're smiling in their face and so on, they came to us and said, okay, you guys are so different than what we see in Fox News. You are so different, right? And another example, a guy came to me when we responded also to New Jersey, the hurricane that hit in New Jersey. And he said, oh, wow, I voted against the mosque, ground zero mosque. So, but now, hey, I'm for it. When he saw that actually Muslims are actually a normal human being and very helpful, they are coming here to help. So we are, you know, we are no different than any other race in this society.
So, Sister Kelona, you talked about the experience on the front line with Ignorant Relief, wherein somebody said, aha, that's an aha moment. Did you ever run into a situation where it appeared that people were hesitant to engage with you because of what you look like?
Absolutely. I even had people directly tell me, you know, that I had a woman, I don't recall what type of aid she was getting, but she was getting some sort of assistance from us. It might have been the food pantry or something along those lines. And I remember she told me, I told my daughter not to talk to people like you. I said, what? What do you mean people like me? She was African-American, I'm African-American. I was like, we're both Black, what do you mean? You know, and I just didn't occur to me. And she said this thing, you know, I told her not to talk to people like you. And I said, well, why? She said, I don't know. I just didn't, you know, I didn't know what kind of people you guys were. And it just seemed like you weren't safe people. And I said, well, what do you think now? She's like, I'm gonna tell my daughter that if she's ever in a bad situation to look for the person with the hijab.
And call you, right?
Yeah, look for the one with the, she said, scarf. You know, and that's important. You know, it's really important because we, you know, mashallah, we do have people out here in our community giving dawah, direct dawah, and that's what they do. And it's a necessary part of living in this country. But I genuinely feel that humanitarian work is able to cross barriers and boundaries that direct dawah will never be able to. You know, you open hearts in a very passive way. And yes, you know, we want people to look at Muslims as better people, right? We want to improve the dialogue and change the narrative about Islam in America. But the truth is that Allah is al-Wadud, right? Allah is the most loving, and Allah is the one that causes people to love you in their hearts. So if we're doing things in line with what Allah commands us to do, then that's what's going to cause people to accept us. That's what's going to change the image. That's what's going to make them love us. You know, it's just stay in line with what Allah commands. And this humanitarian work, we're commanded to do it. It's not optional. Someone had to do it. So you know, fard kifaya, like someone had to do this, mashallah, and we're doing it. So yeah, I've encountered that a lot. And it does make a big impact to be out here in the world, especially in times of tragedy like this.
I don't know. Just want to remind our watchers, we only have about 15 minutes left, and this is your time. If you have questions that you always wanted to ask a relief worker, or always wanted to ask a student or professor at TISA, this is your opportunity to do so. All you have to do is type in the box and we'll read it and we'll try to get it answered. Back to you, to Dr. Abed. This pandemic, it's changed life in many ways that are we're not gonna go back to normal, so-called normal before. Things are gonna be very different. And you're on the front lines now internationally. How has this pandemic affected your work?
It is actually force us and many other organizations to change the way we look at things, including the way we raise funds. So we used to depend heavily on going to the mosques and raise funds from the masjid directly. But now many organizations, if it's not all organizations, changed that and now activated their online department, and they start investing a lot more in the Inca and the online. And alhamdulillah, it's now also because of the lockdown that happens in many places, whether in the United States or overseas, make the movement very difficult to go from area to area and distribute the aid. But alhamdulillah, we're still managing, and although a lot of our donors got affected financially, but they are still donating. Mm-hmm. And this is a fact. I can tell you that maybe this year, on the first 10 days of Ramadan, we raised money more than any other years previously in the online. Because simply, again, Islam is a huge when it comes to giving and humanitarian work and so on. Mm-hmm. So a lot of donors understand that the charity can prevent calamities.
Yes, yes.
They have to give. And when it's become difficult on them, they give more. Mm-hmm. So, and alhamdulillah, Muslims in general are very generous. Even if they don't have, they still can give.
Yes.
And they find ways, exactly. They find ways how to give. Right. So, alhamdulillah, it's, not all bad. We benefit from what happened, and we've been forced to change.
Sister Kelona, any ideas of how things have changed with the pandemic?
Everything's changed. Everything's changed. Where we're needed is changed, and how people can help is changed. I'm gonna go on the opposite side of this donor issue that Dr. Abed touched upon, and that's that. I work with a lot of nonprofit organizations trying to help them with these fundraisers and getting their organization where it needs to be with intuitive solutions. And what you'll find is that because we're under such a crunch, everyone is scrambling. Everyone is desperate to raise money, and they have to be. It's a difficult situation we're in. But what I'm finding we need to constantly advise these organizations is that they need to have compassion. There are donors who cannot donate. There are donors who, have lost their job, have lost their livelihood, whose family members are ill, who they're going through a lot. And so for people who are in humanitarian organizations who are looking to raise funds, I would strongly advise you to start with compassion. Talk to your donors and find out where they're at, and even be willing to say, do you need to downgrade your donation? Do you need to give less right now? Because remember, your risk is low.
Do you need our help? How about
exactly. That? And do you need our help? Exactly, Dr. Jones. And it's unfortunate that so many of us are in this situation, but in these organizations, we're so desperate to survive. But the risk is with Allah, so be compassionate with your donors because they need it.
Dr. Abed, what about a historical perspective on this? Is this the first time that we as Muslims have faced such pressure, both in terms of the context, what I mean by the context, the way people treat us in the wider society, and in terms of this, what's essentially a plague.
No, actually, if you look at the history, back during Khalifa Umar bin Khattab, a similar infectious disease actually spread in Arabic called ta'un. And it killed, according to the researchers, it's around 30,000 Muslims at that time. It's a huge number. So, but the way Umar bin Khattab dealt with it is exactly what now the scientists telling us to do. So, yeah. So, you know, it was a spread in Sham, which is like Syria, Jordan, that area, that disease. So he prevented the people to move from city to city. So he asked the people who are in that city to stay there.
Right.
And he himself did not go to that city. He still, from his own place, he started managing. So, and those who got infected, they took them to the mountains, away from us. But we learn a lot from the Islamic history. As I said, our Islamic history is very, very rich on teaching, you know, how to deal with certain situations, including management, how to manage a crisis.
Yeah, often. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So Umar ibn Khattab dealt with it.
Yeah.
So, and dealt with it the way now the scholars in science are telling us what to do. So the medical doctors and so on. But we did that, you know, 1400 years ago.
MashaAllah. So I often say that, at least when I went through school, and youngsters going through school now, they can go through school, in many school systems, and never hear anything about Islamic civilization. Yes. And this is a crime, in a sense, whether you're for or against Islam, whether you believe in Allah or God or not. If you cannot understand the history of the world without understanding the history of Islam within the context of the world. I could go on about it, but we have a question from one of our viewers, and why don't we go to that, as we have less than 10 minutes left. So the question is, what is the situation regarding Muslims who have been traumatized by the pandemic, and what is being done to prepare for post-pandemic for traumatized Muslims, especially mental health? And that's from one of our viewers. I think I should take this question simply because I opened talking about the post-pandemic professional and organizational leadership workshops. First of all, we're an educational institution, and Dr. Abed is a service institution, and we're Sister Kelona used to work as a service institution. And so the question we raise with ourselves is, what can we do from an educational perspective to help out with this? And we just looked at our advisory board and our Falcon, and we said, we have people who are specialists in areas that people are going to need. And so the workshops that we'd like to take on the road, United States, and what we'd like to raise money for, will focus on 3 areas, starting after Juma in the community. The first area will be mental health strategies for individuals and for organizations. And again, you know, we have psychiatrists, we have counselors, we have other people who are in our network who will be teaching these workshops about how do you deal with it. You know, getting an organization back up and running after everybody's worked at home. How do you deal with the stresses and strains that come about inevitably from this pandemic? So we'll have people who've dealt with it on the front line and can deal with it conceptually. Then the second part of the workshop will be focused on crisis management from our tradition. And the third part of the workshop will be focused on, so how do you take this home? How do you develop either a professional development plan for yourself, or a plan for your organization to build capacity to deal with mental health issues and other issues that come as a result of the pandemic. So that's what TISA is doing. We're wrapping up. Let's switch to the issue of zakat, and because this is the month of Ramadan. Also, it affects the humanitarian work. So, Dr. Abed, why don't you start us off by talking about the connection between Iman and giving?
Yes, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he described believers, one of their descriptions are actually givers. Sure. And if you look at the ayahs in Surah Al-Baqarah, sure, in the first 3 ayahs, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly mentioning it. So, and we as believers believe that the rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider. So, and the concept of mal, the concept of money and wealth and so on, that we know that all belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We as a human being are trusted with this money. And the more we give, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us more. So he said, you know, if we give, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to provide to us. We know that our money is not going to be reduced by giving charities. Our money, and it's going to be blessed when we give our zakah out and help other people. And if you look at the ayah 262 in Surah Al-Baqarah, and ayah number 274 also in Surah Al-Baqarah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing the giver for his sake, describing them as exactly how he described the one who got killed on his sake. Wow. And he said, those people, they will never be afraid and they will never be sad that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take care of them. So he put them on the same level. So and yes, the one who give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the one who fights on the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at the end of these ayahs, and comparing it to the ayah number 170 in Al-Imran, exact same ending with the exact same description. They should not be sad and they should not be afraid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guarantee it. So if you feel that you're gonna be now, you lost your job and you lost a lot in the stock market and you are afraid that you're gonna have a hardship, giving is a solution. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guaranteed He will take care of you.
That He will increase it, inshallah.
He will increase it. Sure.
I've had this personal experience, mashallah. So it's time to wrap up. This is how we'll wrap up. I'll make one more pitch for our Launch Good effort, and then we'll ask Sister Kelona if she has any closing remarks, and then we'll ask Dr. Abed if he has any closing remarks, and close out with dua. So again, if you want to help us with this post-pandemic professional organizational workshop, you'll go to our Launch Good page, which is about leadership, and we showed it at the beginning. And you can, of course, email us at info@islamicseminary.us if you have any questions about it, or you can go to our website and you can find places to donate, and you'll find a link to the Launch Good page. But above all, please pray for everybody, pray for the world, pray for the goodness of the world, and pray that we as Muslims will be the leaders in the good, not in the bad, not in the reactionary, because this is our role as evidenced by both of our speakers this afternoon. And if you want to share this webinar with anybody within the week, inshallah, you just go to the Islamic Seminary of America YouTube channel, and our technical person, Ibrahim, he'll have it there. Sister Kelona, any closing remarks?
I'm not sure about the audience, who all is here, whether it's people who are running organizations or volunteers or just lay people. But I'd like to say, you know, we're all a little scared right now, and we're all facing some sort of challenge, some sort of trial or fitna. And I think the most important thing is that, you know, we have to keep our intentions right. When you get into the business of charity, it's easy to get lost in the details. You know, it's easy to lose sight of why you're doing it. And it's no different when you're a volunteer or when you're a giver. If you maintain the right intention that this is to please Allah, then you'll perform better, you'll do better, and you'll have better results. And you'll see, much like Dr. Jones, like you mentioned, you've seen it in your own life, you'll see the payback. You'll see Allah easing things for you because you're easing things for other people. So I would just say that. And then also I'd like to add, you know, I don't know how familiar the audience is with TISA, but you need to get familiar with TISA. MashaAllah, this is just speaking as a student. It is an amazing organization, and it's doing what a lot of us have been wanting to see in this country for a very long time. There is a strong interest now in ethics and how we operate as organizations and as Muslims in this country. And there are not a lot of educational institutions that are focused on this and that are living what they're, you know, they're walking the walk, or, you know, living what they preach or whatever. You know, TISA does that. TISA is one of the most ethical Islamic organizations I've come across, and they're teaching that to its students to sort of build the next generation of better leaders, better, more ethical leaders. So if you're interested in the program, you know, definitely go to the website and check it out. And if you're not, then support it, because it's doing something that's going to affect you one day, inshallah.
Inshallah. Barakallah fi. Dr. Abed.
I encourage myself and everyone else to read more, learn more. And the more we are equipped with knowledge, the more we know how to lead and how to serve the society better. And for us, knowledge is not just a brain exercise. So we learn to implement. So the more we know how to implement and how to deal with the society, the more successful we're going to be, and how you fight, this is how you fight Islamophobia and others. So with knowledge. So, and I encourage everyone to be learning more about their own religion and be proud of their Islam, because Islam is extremely, extremely powerful religion. Our problem that we don't know it much.
So thank you, Dr. Abed, for those words. We want to ask you to offer a closing dua. We thank you to the viewers for watching this special Ramadan edition of TISA Talks. I call it M that you can use. So closing dua, Dr. Abed.
I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our faculties, our volunteers, our staff, our audience. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us all our work, our fasts, our qiyam, our prayers. Ameen. Jazakum Allah khair. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam wa rahmatullah.